My next guest is a former NFL athlete, American Ninja Warrior on NBC, international speaker, host of the All Shifts podcast, and the founder of Identity Shifts Coaching, Anthony Trucks. Welcome to the Chundria Show. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Of course, my pleasure. Well, let's dive on in. I'm excited to chat with you. So I got your bio. I read in there that you were given away into foster care at the age of 3. You were moved around from one abusive home. You lost your NFL career to injury. And then today you make it your mission to empower others as you thrive through thrive through adversity. You know, how did you personally overcome those challenges and adversity through the different stages of your life?
I think the beginning is just survival. There's a lot that goes on because when you're given away, there's a whole aspect of the foster care system. And then, like you listed off, there's a lot of ups and downs, some great highs, some great lows, right? But I think a lot of it, the beginning is just survival. And then once it's eventually survival becomes instinctual. And I think that's kind of where, for me, in hindsight, a lot of it was just trying to figure out how to get it done. And then after a while, you start to react to certain situations in a typical way because you're used to it. You start to kind of find ways to frame your mind. Like we talked about when we first got on, I had a crappy weekend, but today I chose I'm gonna have a great day. Just those little nuances are part of who I am because of that. And so outside of that, I'm a man of God. So God's been a heavy piece of it. And then great community of people around me as well. And be able to have resources and honestly, we'll call it places to let all the tension out by having discussions, a great place too. So people are a huge part of my world as well.
Oh, that's beautiful. Community is important. Faith is important. And then also just that tenacity, you know, that resilience to get through. So at every stage of your life, I commend you on. I mean, those are some hard feats that a lot of people have experienced, but you know, they don't always come out on top enough to empower others, I should say. Sometimes I'm just trying to survive. I'm not trying to pull the next man up. I'm just trying to get through the race.
Yeah, I was like that for a while too. I think it's what begins that way. It's like just me. And then I think the word I realized that one of my great assets is like understanding my identity. Like, who am I? Where do I fit? Who do I want to align with? Or in those tough moments, what do I give pride to? Am I giving pride to the fact that I don't give up, pride to the fact that I work hard when it doesn't make sense? And the more that I choose who I want to be in those trying moments, I show up in a way that doesn't feel right, but is right. And those little things became who I was. And then in time, I learned like, hey, if I can do this and other people can't, like maybe I can give this insight to the rest of the world. And that's kind of what transitioned into this realm of what I do now, where I speak and share and teach from that same place.
Fantastic. Now you've overcome so much and you've proven to be a true inspiration to others. What did you glean from the overall experience on American Ninja Warrior?
Oh, it's a great show. It was an accident. My wife, she signed me up and didn't tell me. What's funny is it was my recently new wife. We were high school sweethearts, got married, got divorced. And right when we got back together, this is when this all took place. And so I learned that sometimes people will see more in you than you see in yourself. And it's an interesting thing when you let them see it. Because most of the time when somebody wants more for you than you want for you, it causes tension. Because if I don't want it, why do you want this for me? And then you feel bad because this person you think thinks less of you. But when I let it happen, I leaned in. I was like, oh, I can do more than I thought. And also what it taught me was I have to go do things that are uncomfortable to figure out how great I am. So it's like the weirdest thing of life is like we have these things that we want this great moment. I want to feel amazing. I want this self-confidence, self-esteem. But it doesn't come from doing what you've already done or doing more of that, right? It comes from you doing something that's new. And typically new is uncomfortable, especially if it's at a higher level. And so it taught me while I was, 6'2", 225-pound former football player going up against people who are 5'8", $160, $170 rock climbers in a situation that's suited for them. I was like, I still got to find a way to win. Like I got to find a way to do this. And I became the first former NFL athlete to hit a buzzer on the show, which is not normal, right? Because I'm not built for this, but it was me doing uncomfortable things that got to the point of hitting a buzzer and feeling great. And so that was one of the greatest lessons I gleaned from it.
I'm curious. I know your NFL career ended, short-lived due to injury, but then you were on this great show. Did that impact you in any way, or had your injuries healed, or how are you today?
Funny. So it's weird. Like I came this weird turmoil because I was still in the midst of a whole lawsuit with the team that happened with. And so at this time I was doing the show and they're like, well, if you're doing the show, how are you hurt? I was like, that's not the issue. The issue is whether I can play professional football, right? So the thing is with hanging, the position of the muscle, it pulls the shoulder out of the socket. And like the muscles that keep the shoulder in a little bit different than ones that when you press things away. So pressing is football. I can't press to this day. It still hurts. But hanging, I could do all day long, apparently. So it didn't affect it too much, except for if I'd have got to a point of having to push something or press something, I would have been screwed for the show.
Wow. So let's talk about the new year. Our new year is off to a fresh start. Many people have been sitting on their gifts and talents. Through your company, Identity Shift Coaching, how do you encourage people to live up to their potential?
Well, the biggest thing is to realize your potential is greater than what you see it as right now. What we typically say is, what can I do? It's usually based on the limitations I have from my experience of the past. So the first thing I do is I tell people you have to talk to somebody that's outside of your bubble, that sees you in a way that you don't see you, and ask them, hey, what greatness do you see for me that I can't see for me? And be open for the feedback. And they're going to say something that makes your butt pucker. And I go, oh, I don't want to do that, right? And it's going to feel out of character to do that thing. And the next stage is for you to say, well, out of character is not bad. We assume out of character is like, I don't want to be out of character. It's this negative connotation. But the truth is, out of character can also go up. If it's not your character to be nice and welcoming and gracious, if you start doing that, that's out of character, but it's in a positive direction. So realize that once you've been shown something, the steps to do that are going to naturally feel discomfort, and you're naturally be like, I don't want to do this. That's supposed to be there, and lean into taking the actions that are unconfident, out of character actions. And you're not doing it just for an achievement. We assume we're doing it to get that thing. And if it's the only thing you're looking for, that's a problem. What I look at is, I want you to look at doing these actions with the intention of becoming a person that you believe deserves the achievement. Because if I all of a sudden get this thing and it doesn't feel like me, I will self-sabotage to not have the guilt of having this thing. Very interesting dynamic. So what I do is, how can I get you in the new year not to go big to get this thing, but to go small in a big way? And if you go small in a big way, you take the little actions. What happens is, little by little, you earn that confidence, you earn the pride, you're taking the action. Eventually, you'll achieve the outcome. And when you get it, you go, look, I've put in blood, sweat, tears, time to have this. I deserve this. And then it becomes something that's naturally part of who you are. And now you not just have that thing, but you have the level of an identity that has access to vastly more.
I think that feeling of I deserve this is those words are so powerful. When you feel like you deserve something, I feel like you go with it with gusto, you go with it with tension. So I like that you said that.
People fight for what they believe they deserve. As human beings, I will fight for what I believe I deserve. If I believe that's my piece of pie, I'm boxing you if you take it, right? It's my piece. But the reality is we as human beings will fight for what we believe we deserve if it's high, right? Because we did the dark work, or low if we didn't. And so what it has to be is this thing where I believe years ago, the work I did in the dark allows me to not have you take what I believe is mine in the light. So I literally tell people, I've done too much work in the dark for you to take what is mine in the light. That's this, it's a guttural feel, like that's a thing. It's a deep sense. And for humans, if I've done that dark work, I will fight for what I believe I deserve, because it's up here. I'm not settling for this. However, if I didn't do that work, I'll also fight for what I believe I deserve. It is down low. This is a self-sabotage. This is procrastination. This is avoidance. This is the people who get a bunch of money and don't know if they deserve it, and they spend it so they don't have to feel bad about having extra zeros. Sounds really weird, but people do this all the time. So yes, we'll fight for what we believe we deserve. And the only way you can get that level up high is to do stuff in the dark that nobody's watching you do.
I feel inspired already. Is this what consultation with you is like?
Some days, sometimes it's not so much fun. This is all the fun stuff. The fun comes when I poke. We have what's called the shift method, where we dig into this stuff. The work that gets you into motion is like the harder work. We have to actually figure out, there's 3 stages we go through to figure out where you're currently at that you aren't seeing, what you must do to shift, which is usually things you don't even anticipate or think of now. But then it goes in like, how do we get you into motion? And that motion is that really uncomfortable, out of character stuff. But the more you do it, this thing I'm talking about becomes reality. So while it's like, yeah, it's inspirational now, work is always this interesting journey where it's exciting at the beginning, it sucks in the middle, it's amazing at the end.
I feel like you're really getting into the psychology of your clients. Do you feel like that? Like a therapist 100%. In a way, because you have to break so much down to uncover the gifts, to uncover the root of some of the hindrances. Is that how you feel when you're coaching?
It's always part of it. I mean, I work with the mind. Now, I'm not a therapist. I don't do therapy. I'm a former football player. It's not that I have any expertise there. However, there's always a psychology of how we operate as humans. I spend my day listening to people talk and trying to see their brain in the ways that they don't know it's operating. I call it blind spots, right? It's this concept of it's hard to see the label when you're inside of the jar. Most people are in the jar and they don't see the label on the outside of I procrastinate, I'm a bad communicator, I'm pessimistic, I get too angry. They don't see it. And my job is to be able to say, hey, you don't know, but your label says this. And they go, ooh, okay, right? So there is psychology to that, because how I introduce that concept, how I give a solution to it. Because if I give you a problem and no solution, I'm just a mean guy, right? So there's a lot that goes into it for sure that's based in psychology.
So what's your ideal client? I'm curious.
Yeah, well, a lot of different people. Anybody has an identity, really, but the root of who I work with primarily are family-focused business owners who are wanting to make more money, want to drop their guilt and overwhelm, because guilt's a huge piece of all of it, and they want to get into what I call hustle harmony. Hustle harmony is this thing that we all have, this desire to feed the need of like desiring to hustle, to build, to grow. The same as you do, I do. I know you have it because you got this cool podcast, right? So the idea is like, there's that desire, but at the same time, I want harmony in my life. I want to be in health. That's not like, 6-pack abs running 17 marathons, right? My version of health. I want to have an amazing relationship. I want to have great kids that love me if I want to have kids, but I want to have all that stuff be in harmony. And I find that the people I work with primarily are those who seek that. They're not just focused on money and want to neglect the rest of the stuff, but those who want to have that space where life feels unreal in a good way.
Beautiful. That's really beautiful that you get into the mind and you help people. At the end of the day, you're helping people get their deepest desires,
Yeah.
and sometimes you need that. And it goes back to what you said earlier and what you said again, is that community,
Yeah.
whether that's familial, or whether that's your friend, or whether they're booking you, we don't have to do things alone. So I like that premise.
No, we're designed to connect as humans. It's odd when people want to do it alone. Like, you got to do it with community.
Right. Now, you also have an amazing platform yourself. Tell me about your All Shift podcast and how you engage your listeners through your platform.
Yeah. So the All Shift podcast was created because I wanted to talk to cool people with a reason to do so. So I made this podcast, and it's about the All Shift good and All Shift bad moments that make you go, I learned something because it was amazing, or I learned something because it sucked. And it's tied into this language of how successful people make shift happen. And so I started this podcast and accidentally got to like 300 episodes. Like, it just was weird how it built up. And it's been a blast. So I get to dig into people's minds who are successful in a vast different area of worlds, and find out the shifts that they experienced and how they navigated those to be able to have the success they do have.
Wow. And so when did you launch this? How did you get the idea for it? What came first, the coaching business or the podcast?
Well, the coaching was already in place. The podcast was just a weird caveat because I was bored. It was like pre-pandemic, like real close to like the beginning of like 2019-ish in that window. I was like, I want to start a podcast. So I want to interview people. And I literally did it because I was bored. I was like, I want to talk to people. So I started the podcast. The name, I don't even know where the name came from. People were like, that's a great name. I'm like, I know, right? So I just threw it out there, and then it became the name. And it was, it's just been a blast. It came to be with me just putting it out there. And when I interview people, I honestly ask questions out of pure curiosity. I don't have any questions planned. I don't even have intros planned. I just start talking and we figure it out. And it becomes this cool conversation. People go, I really like talking to you. Do you mind if I have my friend like hop on this too? Like, yeah, send them over. So it grew in that way. I don't know if I've ever, until recently, as we try to elevate the podcast, have ever asked for a guest. People just, in a weird way, kind of built up. From the beginning, I asked for like 5 people, and it took on a mind of its own. And so
where did you get those first 5 people from?
Well, I think the world I live in, I watch and consume a lot of content. So I was just like, I watch TV and I'm like, I like this guy. I'd send messages out to people. I just always just send messages like, I like what you do. Do you mind hopping on? Can I interview you? The good thing is I do have a background of the NFL, and I've spoken. It's like I have a bit of a pedigree, we'll call it. Like, my bio is enough for people to go, oh, he's a credible person. So I think that did aid me in getting good guests on the beginning, but it was just it. I would watch television shows, or I'd watch people in my world, or see somebody on the stage, or like see someone's content and go, I like that video you did. Do you mind hopping on my podcast? And that was how it began, the first 5 or 6 people. And then after that, it was just people recommending people. And it literally got to the point where I had 90 episodes in the can. 90. At one point, we had 90.
How many do you have today? 200?
Well, so we're at 300 now. We dropped all of them. So as we upgrade the podcast, they're doing 3 a week to get them all out. We're like, let's just go to 1 a week and have amazing guests that are hard to get. So I have a whole publicist team that goes out big after big guest names. But no, it started off with me just doing that. And then I give people a booking link, and people just started booking sessions. And so I would just hop on. I would do sometimes like 10 podcasts a day. like a day, and it would just sit there and record and just put them out, and the team edits them. It's a good system. And then at one point I looked up and I go, I have 90 recorded, edited, ready to post. I got to stop recording. So I stopped recording for probably the last 8 months while we dropped all the rest of the episodes to start launching the next ones here in February.
And how long does the average podcast last?
Between 22 and 27 minutes.
Okay.
The
so
next
based
one
on that person, you just explore, hey, let's press record. I'm just going to talk, I'm going to ask questions, and just let the conversation flow. I think that's really cool.
I find out who they are in real time. I barely even look at the bio. I look at the bio to get 1 or 2 nuggets to give as an introduction, and that's it. And the rest of it is curiosity, just pure, genuine, like a child. What did you say? What does that mean? Tell me this again. Oh, I heard of that. And I go. And then it becomes fun. I'm actually having fun. They're having fun. And then the guests, the listeners, I think they feel the fun, and it's more engaging that way.
You mentioned the name of the coaching. You mentioned the name of the podcast, how it just kind of came organically. And do you have any plans to expand the brand?
Yeah, of course. I was going to expand
something else under the same moniker or similar moniker?
It'll be a different. So the realm of work I do is identity, right? So it's identity shift, which is where the shift word came into play. I have a book called Identity Shift. The podcast is Awe Shift Podcast. I have the Shift Starter Daily, which is a daily, weekly podcast I do. But here's what I really recently figured out in the world of what I do. Coaching is a big piece, and people don't desire. No one in the history of ever woke up and said, I want an identity shift. Nobody, right? So I was like, well, what is the thing that this does? And I went and talked to my clients, and I had somebody give me a call one day, and it was really interesting how they asked the question. They go, man, I'm struggling in my marriage. I'm struggling in my business. Like, how do you fix your marriage? How do you have this parenting thing figured out? How's your business run? Like, I feel like whenever I'm gone, I feel bad for being gone. And when I'm with my family, I feel like this bad for being focused on work and all these things. And I go, is it guilt? I goes, yeah, I feel real guilty. I go, oh, let me figure this out. So I went and I actually asked previous clients, hey, when you started, did you feel like guilt in some areas? Like, oh yeah, I did, and listed it off. And I go, well, what I really do is I help people drop guilt and overwhelm. Like, it's a big thing that I help eliminate that pain. But then I go, well, where do I take people then? And this is where the hustle harmony came to play. And I go, oh, well, what I do in my life is I hustle, I get down. I love to grind. It's just, I enjoy it. Maybe it's the sports in me, who knows, but I like to be off also. And when I'm off, I'm off. I learned this through breaking my marriage and I was a bad parent, all that craziness. But now at this point, I got a beautiful harmony to life. And I go, this is the place I take people, to this place of hustle harmony. But it's a version of my identity that makes that happen with like an effortless effort. It's like an ease. And so what I found is an identity shift helps you drop guilt and overwhelm and shifts you into an identity that can experience hustle harmony.
I think that's incredible. And I think that you're bringing your discipline and your amazing work ethic into everything that you do. And so, you're going to continue to see results. You're going to continue to empower and inspire, those that you come in contact with, those that you interview, those that are your clients, and just, the myriads of people that you're running to, today and beyond. So COVID-19 has been the ultimate challenge for the world at large, as you know. I mean, people around us have suffered loss and financial disparity and so much more. For anyone out there watching who finds it difficult to see the good in life right now, who finds it difficult to see the light at the end of the dark tunnel, or that solution to that resounding problem, what word of encouragement can you offer today?
There's one that was given to me by a guy. He was an American Gladiator. Dan Nitro, I think it was Nitro Smith, whoever Nitro was, I can't think of his last name. But at one point in the interview, he says, action ends suffering. I go, oh, it's true. Like, if you think about it, the suffering of being hungry, the action of eating ends that. The suffering of being cold, a blanket, the action of getting a blanket may end that, right? So there's an action that ends suffering. So if you have suffering of a lack of self-esteem, a lack of success, maybe a lack of a feeling like you're comforted in your community, maybe even lacking a loved one, there's an action that can be taken to end the suffering in some manner. Now, will every action end it? No. Trial and error is part of life, right? But if you do nothing, the longer you do nothing, the longer you are subjecting yourself to that pain. So if it doesn't feel like you should move or you want to move, that's the first moment and the first red flag of you need to go do something. And the actions in time, they take the focus away from what you're experiencing and they put it in a new direction to create something. In that feedback from the world of, man, I feel better in my body, or I've created something that I'm proud of. Those emotions in a positive start to trump the negative and you start coming out of that funk. So action ends suffering.
Action in suffering. That's a brilliant quote. I am so grateful for your time and your expertise. Thank you so much for being my special guest on the Chundria Show today. What is the best way for anybody watching that wants to book you, wants to work with you, or wants to just continue to follow your journey?
Yeah, simple. AnthonyTrucks.com. Everything you need is there. If you want to find me on social, at Anthony Trucks on Instagram is the fastest place you can find me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.